here's your host, Alex Garrett.
Well, with us today is one of my longtime friends and someone I met a long time ago at the Henry Viscardi School of Viscardi Center. One Mike Caprara, basically the man behind the scenes in IT and the front and center of IT as well. Mike, thanks for joining me.
It's a pleasure to be here, Alex. And, we've known each other for quite some time.
At least 20 years or so, right? So
at least. I mean, I've been at the organization, the Viscardi Center, for over 20 years now, 21 years. So I love working here. You know that. And like I said, I'm glad to be with you here today, Alex.
Well, let's talk about this because obviously there's some big tech things going on with the Viscardi Center that I know you wanted to come on and talk about. Not just what's happening on March 23rd, but it sounds like I always called it, the little brick wall in Albertson, the little bit brick building in Albertson. You guys are expanding beyond just Albertson, aren't you, as an IT department and really an adaptive IT department as well?
Yeah, so about 5 or 6 years ago, we had launched digital accessibility services here at the Viscardi Center. And what that truly is ensuring that companies' websites, digital presence, online digital presence, documents, caption, videos, embedded videos are fully accessible to everyone, including people with disabilities. Like I said, about 5 or 6 years ago, it actually started out of the Henry Viscardi School. We actually had one of the parents of one of our students at Henry Viscardi School complained that the homework or coursework that was being sent home on a daily basis was not accessible to their child. So at the time, our CEO, John Kemp, and I had put a flag in the ground after investigating and see exactly what was wrong with the material. And lo and behold, it was not accessible. The student at the time could not actually work independently, and they could not, actually access the coursework on a daily basis. So after we put that flag in the ground, we had started document remediation services. We used all the resources that we had through our Kornreich Technology Center, who were assistive technology specialists, but also document remediation accessibility specialists as well. We started with the documents, whether it was PDF, Word, PowerPoint type files, and then we were able to kind of get quite good at it, and we were able to offer internally those services. But then we said, you know what? There are other organizations that require these types of services outside of our walls, and that how can we offer it to other organizations? And so we had spun off what is called a social enterprise, just for documents at the time. And since it was a very manual process, every document was touched by a human, let's say, versus all these automatic services out there. We were only able to, at capacity, remediate up to 1,000 pages a month. And it was very costly. We had charged by the hour and so forth. So then what we had done is that we had partnered with digital publishing companies that are automating or digitizing, whether it's books, magazines, novels, et cetera, textbooks. And we added the automation element to it. And the automation element gets us to about 75 to 80% of the way accessible. And then we have our remediation specialists, to what we call as our final mile piece, to 100% accessibility, but also run it through 6 points of quality assurance so that every document is being tested with assistive technology before it's returned to them.
Well, this is so important. You mentioned a little while ago that Dr. Kemp and you came up with all these plans. So having this adaptive education and technology is so important, especially during the pandemic. I feel like 3 years ago we all were thrown for a loop, but of course the disabled community a little bit more, because how do we get that adaptive technology? So how did Viscardi Center play a role in making sure working from home and school at home was adapted enough?
Yeah, so to that point, it's a great question. We had again, we started with the documents. And again, once we introduced automation, we were able to scale up to 40,000 pages a month versus 1,000 pages a month, which is crazy, right? So with that being said, is that, all companies' PowerPoints, all scanned documents were, now, like you said, during the pandemic, people were working from home. Well, those had to be made accessible right away so that people can fulfill their job duties. So that was what we had to adapt there. But also when it came to website auditing, website usability testing, so we had spun that, we had added that to our portfolio services as well, so that we're testing websites with people with disabilities or by people with disabilities that or native users of assistive technology. Because like you said, during the pandemic, when people had to shop, whether they had to find information about COVID, vaccination sites, testing sites, those websites were not accessible by people with disabilities. So we worked with a lot of companies that we had to ensure that all that information, that research, was accessible by all. And then the third piece was captioning. So we had started providing closed captioning services to live meetings, whether it was on Zoom or Teams or WebEx, whatever platform that they required. We had to be able to provide that on a short notice because of the amount of virtual meetings that were happening. So we're able to do that now, but also the embedded videos. We were able to provide captioning to embedded videos on websites, digital content, and then because what we saw was that people with disabilities during the pandemic, it really wasn't much different. I mean, besides one thing was that it put a showcase on was that people with disabilities have a lot of barriers just getting to and from work. Right. So transportation is always a big issue for people with disabilities. I guess silver lining out of the pandemic, right, is that, they were able to work from home. They were able to fulfill their job duties and probably already had their setups with assistive technology already in their home. So in the end, it wasn't anything really new to them to be able to work from home and to be able to work remotely and to work effectively from home. The thing is that we had to be able to ensure that that content that we were sending home to them was accessible by them.
Absolutely. Now, there are a couple of things I want to take you behind. I want to ask about behind the scenes. How did you pull together Sports Night for 2020 and graduation? I mean, those were really well put together. How did that all come together?
That's when we say it takes a village, it sure does. So Sports Night, we had to pivot. We had to go full remote. We had to come up with other options to keep our donors and our constituents engaged. We had reached out to a number of athletes that were able to provide us with video content, really, saluting the Viscardi Center, providing a lot of, uplifting type content for our constituents. We had to use a virtual live auctioneer for our big ticketed event items, so that we can bring in a lot of that great funding from our donors and our supporters. Graduation was interesting. I know the way I was envisioning it was from the 2020 NFL draft. That was like my vision. And I remember seeing Roger Goodell with the screen behind him and the different tiles popping up behind him. So we tried to recreate that. Obviously, we don't have the technology of the NFL, but we were able to provide a great experience for those students that were graduating. We know that it's a once in a lifetime thing for these students, and we wanted to ensure that they were able to experience that with their peers, their teachers that they had, since they were in kindergarten for the most part, right? So,
yeah. Shout out to Kenny Albert, by the way, for doing the Sports Night. I mean, that was a lot of taping, it seems like, but it came together.
Oh, it was great. It was interesting. We brought Kenny Albert here at the center, and then we had to shoot him in the dark. in the gym where we had we had the lights off, kind of showcasing him that, that this was virtual, that the lights, Viscardi didn't go dark, but it was him in the building, and we were able to kind of showcase that.
All right, I got to ask this because adaptive technology and always ever-changing technology isn't just an adjustment period for the kids, but it is for the teachers. I remember when you guys introduced the smartboard technology and the teachers were having a bit of an issue. Now you're saying, well, now you got to help them teach from as they're at home. I mean, what another level of adjustment, right?
It was a tremendous adjustment. When, excuse me, when the pandemic first broke out, we were ready to go, Alex. I mean, we were already had Microsoft Teams implemented, Office 365. We had a number of remote workers. We had a number of disabled workers that were already, that were already prepared to work from home. We also, with our students at Henry Viscardi School, a lot of students that when they go out for surgeries or they're absent from school from an extended period of time, in the past, we were always able to set them up with distance learning. And we would use, at the time, we would use like WebEx and so forth, excuse me, to get them back into the classroom. But Microsoft Teams made it a lot easier for us. We were able to, whether it was streaming, when the teachers were home to all their students, live instruction. A lot of public schools were not providing live instruction using these platforms. They were using recordings. But we went live with our students, live with our related service, occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech language pathology sessions. We were able to continue that. Some teachers actually came into the classrooms physically by themselves and taught from their classrooms, live streaming to those students. So we were very prepared for this. Again, this was not anything new to us. We were not really caught off guard. It just accelerated once we decided to make that decision to go full remote.
Mike Caprara is my guest. He is, I feel like you're the head of IT. Is that the correct title for you, sir?
So I am the Chief Information Officer.
CIO, very cool. Yep. And so, well, this is why I have you on, because you're a great spokesperson for the IT department. But, you mentioned this is nothing new in that sense. Well, it's true, because we've had a lot of kids do distance learning even before pandemic. I mean, I remember Hillary when she was in the hospital and rehab after her multiple hospital stints was able to do distance learning with us. So I think distance learning is a little more prevalent than maybe the average person realizes in the disabled community.
Yeah, and again, it's silver lining out of the pandemic, right? So it's showcased that this can be done, all right? And we were doing it all along, and like I said, we were prepared. We were prepared, and especially when we had Microsoft Teams as our platform. I know a lot of public schools use Google Classroom, but we're a Microsoft shop here. But it allowed them to really not skip a beat. We sent home equipment that was needed at home. We sent assistive technology that was required. We had set up my staff here as a depot, just in case that anything was broken, that they could physically bring their equipment back to us so that we can repair it. But again, the idea was that not to have our students skip a beat, continue with their education, and we really flourished. I got to admit, we really flourished during that time. Don't get me wrong, I love seeing the kids back in person. It's great when they all came back, but during that time, working remote again was not anything new to us.
All right. Well, do you feel like, on the whole, I know that Viscardi's trying to change this gap or narrow the gap, if you will, but there's still a technological gap for people with disabilities. And how is Viscardi narrowing that gap almost every day, I would say?
Yeah, I mean, internally, we are. I know we work very closely with the occupational therapists and the speech language pathologists, working side by side with them with any adaptive equipment, whether it's high tech or low tech. We have our occupational therapists are very creative. They're actually making their own technology or we call this makerspace type technology, where it's adaptive customized for each individual. We invested in our STEM program. We invested 3D printing and laser engravements, where students are actually creating their own assistive technologies on the low tech side, whether it's adaptive wrist braces with pointers on the end of them so they keep their hands straight, whether it's creating cup holders for their pencils and pens that can attach to their wheelchairs, or how they can extend their arm, with a 3D printing device to be able to reach out of their wheelchair. So our kids are very creative. They know what their needs are personally, and for us to be able to teach them how to use programs like AutoCAD and design architectural design type software so that they can create their own assistive technology is absolutely amazing.
Well, it is, and then the kids are very smart too, so they pick up on it fairly quick, right?
Oh, absolutely. And again, it all ties into, our digital accessibility services as well, is that, again, we are breaking down those barriers for people with disabilities to be able to go on the internet and access websites and purchase goods and services just like anybody else would without any barriers.
All right. Well, let me ask you this, because as you mentioned, barriers and whatnot. Well, there's a prospective student that wants to come to Viscardi, and the kids and the parents are worried. Well, they have a lot of internet exposure, and who knows what they're searching. How does Viscardi IT make sure the wrong sites are actually eliminated? Like there's a firewall for student safety, because we saw in the pandemic phone scrolling and everything like that. Everything just changed for the kid technologically, and they want to make sure it's a safe environment for the kids, right? So how does an IT ensure that?
So we take cybersecurity very, very seriously around here. And to your point, especially because we work with students. And so, we have sophisticated web filtering. We've got sophisticated email filtering. We perform what we call quarterly vulnerability scans, where we have a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week SOC, a security operating center, which actively monitors all inbound and outbound traffic that's coming in and out of the Viscardi Center. The vulnerability scans it's more an in-depth, scan where our security operating center, the SOC, is taking a more in-depth look and scans every device, looking for any sort of vulnerability within our network, even down to the printer level. Then what we also do is that we have annual data network penetration tests where we actually hire third-party hackers to try and break into our network and try to expose any vulnerabilities that we may have on our infrastructure. And if they identify them, we quickly rectify them. Two-factor authentication has been a big implementation that we've had the past couple of years. We utilize at least 2 services for that. And of course, we have obviously cybersecurity insurance. We have throughout our organization. So we take it very seriously. Our data is backed up in 4 places. Just in case if there's any sort of ransomware style attack on our network. So there's been a lot of effort, especially over the last few years, that we're seeing more and more attacks happen. But we have a lot of student information, student data, donor data, our donor constituents, and also on our adult side, we have a lot of federal grants, state grants that we work with. So we have to ensure that not only we're following our procedures, but also federal and state type of cybersecurity procedures as well.
Okay, I didn't want to go here because I don't know the budget for IT or technology at Viscardi Center, but obviously what you just described is probably a lot of money. So let's say a budget for 4201 schools comes in. Is that crucial to the IT of the Viscardi Center as well, to make sure we have that budget still flowing for, not only the kids, but the IT, the technology, the technological safety, if you will?
Absolutely. It's 100%. That funding from New York State, from the 4201 Association, goes for all the programs for the school, but also it's overhead expenses like IT and accounting and human resources. But yeah, I mean, the IT infrastructure, it's not cheap. It's not cheap, but it's ever growing. It has to be protected. As we're becoming more and more reliant on such services. Whether it's all our student records are now digitized. All of our student coursework is digitized. All of the IEPs and the employees time and attendance record, payroll, everything is digitized now, and it has to be protected. There has to be a large emphasis on protecting that information.
When we talk about the golf outing, you were fired up to do this, and I could see why, because you've got a lot that you want to get out there into the public knowledge. Is that because, let's say, adaptive technology doesn't get covered a lot, that there should be more coverage of what is going on in the adaptive technology sector that's not right now?
Yeah, so I speak to a lot of HR companies, human resources companies, human resources departments, the disability coordinators, DEI coordinators, digital equity inclusion coordinators, et cetera. And when I speak to them, I always say, yeah, DEI is great, and it's a great initiative that you guys are doing, but you're missing another letter, and it's A, for accessibility. Okay. When I talk to HR professionals, accessibility is always left out. All right, they talk about race and gender and other things, but people with disabilities and accessibility is always left out for some reason. And so that's what we do now. And again, part of our digital accessibility service is to educate HR departments, general counsel, all the DEI coordinators, that accessibility and people with disabilities need to be included in this conversation. Okay, it's about providing fulfillment work by people with disabilities, hiring people with disabilities for work and employment. And so it needs to be in the conversation.
And that's why you're doing a webinar in about a week from Thursday, right? Tell us about that.
Sure. So we're bringing the webinars back. We were performing webinars a few years ago, probably about once a month. And then during the pandemic, we started noticing that there was some webinar fatigue going on because everybody was doing them. But we feel that now that a lot of people are back in the office, it's time to start bringing them back. So we're going to have, starting March 23rd, we're going to have webinars every quarter around digital accessibility, why it's important, why it's vital in today's world, the business case behind it, the legal aspect behind it. So that's what we're going to be talking about there. We're going to step through each of the services, whether it's website accessibility, document remediation, and also closed captioning and audio description type services. And to give a broad overview, again, business model, why it's important. I don't think people even realize this, that there is $1.2 trillion of discretional income by people with disabilities that are looking to spend online. So if any business that's out there that is not willing to take advantage of it because you don't want to make your website accessible is absolutely foolish. So, so that's why.
Say that number one more time. It kind of flew off the tongue there. Say it one more time.
$1.2 trillion.
Wow.
Yes. And again, they're looking to spend money. And what we have seen is that, and what I noticed from me working here is that people with disabilities are very loyal. And if they can go to a website that is easy to navigate, easy to access, and they have items that they want to purchase, they're going to come back to you time and time again and spend their hard-earned dollars, because that's who they are. That's the nature of people with disabilities. They're very loyal. They understand that people have taken the effort to help them. They are going to come back time and time again. And we're going to talk a lot about that during our webinar on March 23rd.
And how do people sign up?
So you can go to viscardicenter.org and you click under the events section. You'll be able to find the information about the webinar. And then you can register right then and there.
And we're going to have a description in the link as well. But in case they missed the description, just wanted to get that on tape as well. So thanks for clarifying. All right. Now, what really got me going about having you on this podcast is you mentioned something about Portland, that the Viscardi Center has tentacles reaching all the way to Portland. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so through digital accessibility services, were recently awarded the preferred vendor of choice for document remediation for the city of Portland, Oregon. So meaning that all documents that are public facing or are going to be on their website or are going to be part of their marketing campaigns, and also for internal use as well, must go through Viscardi Center's document remediation services before they are posted online. So, I mean, we're working with the Parks Department, the Water Department, Department of Sanitation, Human Resources, et cetera. All the different departments throughout the city of Portland, Oregon, all of their documentation must be made accessible before distribution. It is a great initiative that the city of Portland had put out there, keeping accessibility and people with disabilities in mind and at the forefront. And this is a 5-year deal that Viscardi was awarded. And what's even nicer about this is that it's a cooperative agreement, meaning that not only does this that the city of Portland can take advantage of these services, but any municipality throughout the country is open to take advantage and leverage the pricing that was awarded to Portland and Viscardi, or contractually agreed upon by the two entities, and they'll be able to have the same price and be able to leverage the Viscardi Center services, and whether it's Portland or whether it's Houston, Texas, or Miami, Florida, or whether it's town of Islip here on Long Island, they can get the same pricing as the city of Portland and leverage those services.
Wow. By the way, this is sort of what Dr. Viscardi's dream was when he created the Viscardi Center, right? That getting it not just in the little town of Albertson, but beyond the brick walls, the brick building, right?
Oh, absolutely. This falls right in line with the mission of the organization. It's providing inclusiveness for organizations. It's providing level playing field for people in employment and students to access content and work and presentations, et cetera. So this is really falls into the mission. This is, again, like you said, Viscardi's vision for this organization. Except now it's more of a modern type vision, right? So it's more of a digital inclusion. It's more of ensuring that everyone can participate and collaborate.
All right, before I let you go, because we got a couple of minutes left here, what about students? I know that Sam Taveras was a huge part of the IT department for quite a few years, even after graduation. So are you always welcoming back alumni? Can current students maybe do an internship? I mean, what about those that are interested in the IT world and want to really dig in, roll up their sleeves, if you will, and help out the IT department with things like the Sportsman Tournament? The video of that is so extensive. It's a great learning experience for a student or even an alumni.
Alumni from HVS or even our Abilities Inc. program are more than welcome to come back. We love having them come back as interns or helping out or even paying gigs as well. Sam was absolutely tremendous for us for the number of years, and we've seen he's absolutely flourished in his new roles. Whether it was with Major League Baseball or with the Carolina Panthers, Sam was absolutely tremendous. But he helped us out. He came back for special projects like the basketball tournament, graduation. He was absolutely tremendous. So we welcome back interns that are interested in coming back. Alumni is interested in interns coming back, whether it's working in our multimedia learning center or it's working in the IT department. We've actually had internship opportunities come up through our digital accessibility services, where people with disabilities are actually learning how to provide accessibility audits and usability testing using assistive technologies, so that for our companies and clients that we work with.
Wow, wow, wow. Very cool. Well, Mike Caprara, I appreciate this time. And you know what? Maybe we'll do a quarterly thing where you can preview the next webinar as it comes up. So I'd love to have you on quarterly.
Oh, that's awesome. I would love it.
All right, this has been Alex Garrett, Adapting with Alex Garrett side of things, and Mike Caprara, the CIO of the Viscardi Center IT Department. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Alex, for having me. This was fantastic.
And we'll be back with more on the Alex Garrett Podcast Network.